He was the king of the savannah, monitored by scientists, loved by environmentalists, and yet he was killed for $50,000. Cecil's story isn't just about a lion, it's about power, money, and the price of wildlife. Have you ever heard of Cecil, the lion who captured the world's attention? But what you probably don't know is that his story goes far beyond a simple struggle for survival in the savannah. It involves mystery, tough choices, and even a hunt that shocked the planet. In this video, we're going to uncover how Cecil's life, marked by a powerful rise and a tragic fall, moved the hearts of millions. Get ready to understand the real impact of his death and how it changed the way we think about conservation and illegal hunting. By the end, you'll discover something you likely never imagined about Cecil's legacy and the future of lions. On the vast golden plains of Hwanga National Park in Zimbabwe, a young lion was beginning to carve out his path to royalty. Cecil, as named by researchers from the University of Oxford, became part of a GPS tracking project launched in 2008, aimed at studying the behavior and conservation of African lions. What no one knew was that this shy cub held the potential to become a global icon. It was the beginning of a journey marked by strength, strategy, and survival. Alongside his brother, Cecil starred in one of the most intriguing stories in the biology of large predators. Together they faced and defeated the dominant male in the area, taking control of an established pride. This type of leadership takeover is common among lions but rarely documented in such detail. As noted by the research team from the University of Oxford, the pair showed a rare cohesion, essential for the success of any coalition. However, the balance was broken. During the consolidation of their dominance, Cecil's brother was killed, a brutal, yet not uncommon outcome in such conflicts. Now alone, Cecil inherited not just the pride but also the weight of genetic continuity and the defense of a precious territory. He became the guardian of a newly formed legacy. From then on, the eyes of science and conservation would follow him more closely. Over the following years, remote monitoring revealed a meticulous leader who not only survived, but thrived. His movements were tracked in real time, allowing for unprecedented behavioral analysis. As reported by the Oxford Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, or WildCRU, the young lion was transforming into a symbol of biological resilience and ecological importance. Still, the balance in that savannah was about to be challenged by new contenders for the throne. With the death of his brother, Cecil became the sole guardian of one of Hwanga's most influential prides. It was the beginning of a reign that would combine instinct, intelligence, and surprising longevity. As reported by the University of Oxford, few lions managed to maintain dominance for so many consecutive years, and even fewer do so without suffering major defeats. Cecil didn't just survive, he thrived. His pride grew to include 22 members, a number considered exceptional in the dynamics of big cats. During this time, Cecil fathered multiple litters, strengthening his lineage and, the region's population balance. The presence of so many cubs indicated not only his virility, but also his ability to protect them from external threats, like rival males or even poachers. According to data from WildCRU, each cub represents not just a life but years of ecological investment in an environment increasingly pressured by human activity. Though monitored by a GPS collar, Cecil seemed to move like a master of the territory, always anticipating risks and, avoiding disputes. It was rare for a lion of his age and experience to maintain dominance over so many females and young for so long. His behavior suggested more than just brute strength. There was strategy, patience, and honestly, a certain kind of animal charisma. It was almost as if the very ecosystem had recognized in him a figure of balance. But not even kings are immune to the instability of the savannah. As the years passed, the marks of time became visible, but his stance remained firm. Still, in nature, youth is a valuable currency, and as in every wild kingdom, new challengers began to circle the edges of his domain. What was to come would test not only Cecil's physical strength but also his ability to recognize the right moment to retreat or to fight once more. In 2013, the stability of Cecil's reign was tested. Two young lions, full of vigor and ambition, appeared on the borders of the territory he had held for years. This kind of challenge is not uncommon among African lions, especially when a dominant male begins to age. According to researchers from the University of Oxford, such confrontations are crucial for population balance and ensure genetic renewal within prides. The savannah, after all, does not tolerate weakness for long. Cecil faced the intruders with the same courage that had made him a leader years before. In the first clash, he emerged victorious, reinforcing his reputation as an experienced warrior. But even with the win, something changed. Instead of continuing to fight for a now unstable territory, he made an unusual decision for a dominant lion. He retreated. He left behind the pride he had built, choosing to preserve his life and seek a new beginning elsewhere in the park. A rare and strategic decision. This kind of behavior even surprised the scientists at Wild CRU, who had been monitoring him closely. Instead of falling in battle, as many threatened males do, Cecil showed an almost human awareness of cost and benefit. He chose to live, and in doing so, paved the way for a new phase of his story. One that would involve not just survival but also partnership. After all, no king rules alone forever. In the vastness of Hwanghae there were other opportunities, and Cecil knew it. The search for a new territory led him to cross paths with another equally imposing lion, Jericho. And what began as a solitary journey soon turned into a powerful alliance that would once again change the fate of the one who had been called king. After abandoning his old domain, Cecil traveled miles through the savannah until he found a new opportunity. In a less contested region of Hwanghae National Park, he crossed paths with another adult lion, Jericho. What could have been a confrontation turned into an unlikely alliance. A coalition between two adult males, though uncommon, is not unheard of, especially when the goal is to reclaim or conquer a new pride. According to Wild CRU, this strategy exponentially increases the chances of reproductive success and protection against threats. Cecil and Jericho soon took control of a new pride, made up of fertile females and young cubs. The power transition was quick and efficient, reinforced by Cecil's dominant charisma and Jericho's physical strength. Together, they sired at least 12 cubs, expanding the genetic impact of both on the African lion population in the region. As revealed in reports by the University of Oxford, this union marked one of the most productive and peaceful phases of Cecil's life. It was as if he had found not just territory again, but also purpose. The partnership also brought stability to the new group. The pride thrived under the leadership of the two males, with a rare balance between strength and cooperation. The GPS monitoring system allowed researchers to track their movements, revealing a synchronized and efficient dynamic of patrolling and hunting. It was like watching a wild choreography. While one moved away to protect the territory's borders, the other stayed close to the pride. As if they knew that alone, they would be vulnerable. But together, they were nearly invincible. However, amid the calm, forces outside the savannah began to interfere in a silent yet lethal way. Trophy hunting, especially when carried out outside the park's safe boundaries, was becoming an increasingly present threat. And despite his territorial intelligence, Cecil would soon be lured into a mistake that would cost far more than his reign. In the winter of 2015, Cecil was lured beyond the protected limits of Hwanghae National Park, an invisible but, fatal line. The bait used was fresh meat, placed on a nearby property where hunting is legally permitted through licenses. However, what followed was not an act of regulated hunting but honestly an ethical and ecological violation. The person responsible was Walter James Palmer, an American dentist and trophy hunter, who paid around $50,000 to carry out the killing. As indicated by investigations from the BBC and Zimparks, Cecil was hit with an arrow and only died hours later after a final shot. The impact was immediate. Cecil was not just an ordinary African lion. He was the most monitored animal in the region, part of a project by Oxford University launched in 2008. His GPS collar transmitted valuable data on behavior, movement, and social relationships among savanna lions. By killing him, Palmer didn't just break an ecological boundary, he silenced one of the greatest living sources of scientific information on lions. And he tried to cover up the crime, decapitating the animal and attempting to destroy the collar, as reported by National Geographic. The death caused global uproar. Headlines exploded across all continents, and public figures, from environmentalists to celebrities, expressed outrage. Within days, Cecil's name became a symbol in a global debate about illegal hunting and the moral limits of trophy tourism. Zimbabwe responded with a temporary suspension of hunting permits, but would soon face a harsh reality. With more than 200 lions at risk of being culled by private reserves on the verge of bankruptcy, the government gave in to economic pressure. CECIL, who for years had evaded natural predators and territorial challenges, was defeated by the most powerful weapon of the modern world, money. But the legacy he left was not buried with his body. His death triggered investigations, reforms, and an international wave of support for African lion conservation. Still, for his descendants the threat persisted. And for one of them in particular, fate seemed to be shaped by the same invisible claws that had killed his father. Cecil's death was not just an animal tragedy, it was a global catalyst. Within days, protests and petitions spread across social media, while Zimbabwean authorities came under pressure from international conservation organizations such as the Born Free Foundation and WWF. The government, initially caught off guard, temporarily suspended the issuance of hunting licenses in an effort to contain the scandal. But financial reality soon prevailed. Several of the country's wildlife reserves were facing collapse, and around 200 lions were threatened with being culled due to the drop in tourism revenue. The controversy raised a difficult question: how to balance wildlife conservation with the economic dependence on legal hunting. In many African countries, including Zimbabwe, the fees charged to wealthy hunters, like the $50,000 paid for Cecil's death, are among the few direct sources of funding for protecting natural areas. According to a report from Panthera and data from the Oxford Wildlife Conservation Unit, this model creates a paradox. The life of one animal can fund the survival of many others. But, when that ethical line is crossed, public outrage can be devastating. CECIL's case also forced diplomatic changes. Several countries began reviewing their trophy import policies. The United States, through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, even placed the African lion on the endangered species list, making it more difficult for hunting trophies from Africa to be legally brought in by hunters. That was a direct consequence, really fueled by the visibility that Cecil brought. By becoming a symbol of a cause, the lion transcended the limits of the savannah and became an icon of environmental resistance. But while the world debated policy and ethics, on the hot plains of Hwanga, Cecil's descendants remained vulnerable. One of them, Xanda, carried not only his father's DNA, but also his symbolic weight, and as fate sometimes insists on repeating its own mistakes. The next chapter of this story would soon shock the world once again. In 2017, 2 years after Cecil's death, tragedy struck again, but this time, the scene was even darker. Xanda, Cecil's son, was killed in the same cruel way that had taken his father's life. The hunter responsible was again Walter James Palmer, who, after the incident with Cecil, had been banned from hunting in several parts of Africa. But over time, he was allowed to return, subject to restrictions. Yet history repeated itself, and Xanda's death sparked another wave of global outrage. As noted by Zimparks, the lion was hunted in an area near the park's border, a zone where legal hunting was still permitted. The emotional impact of this loss was immediate. For many, Xanda represented the continuation of a legacy, a direct link to the renowned Cecil. His death was not just the end of an animal, but also the end of a symbol in the fight for conservation. And like Cecil's case, the event prompted a deeper examination of the ethics of trophy hunting and wildlife protection policies. According to the Oxford Wildlife Conservation Unit, the loss of figures like Cecil and Xanda is not just a blow to wildlife, but also a major setback for research and monitoring efforts of African lions. But Xanda's tragedy also revealed a cruel facet of the reality of hunting in Africa. Although the Zimbabwean government had toughened some of its policies, illegal hunting remains a major challenge for conservation. The hunters don't stop, and the pressure on natural resources remains intense. In 2017, after Xanda's death, the discussion around hunting intensified, but without concrete results in terms of prevention. With each lion hunted, a cycle of destruction repeats itself. But will preservation ever be stronger than the profit that hunting generates? Despite these losses, the story of Cecil, his pride, and his descendants did not fade away. They remained symbols of the struggle for survival and the preservation of wildlife, even when the world seemed to forget. But the question remains, how long will Cecil's legacy be enough to ensure the protection of African lions in the face of the forces threatening their future? Did you know that Cecil's death wasn't just the end of a lion but the beginning of a revolution in animal conservation? And now, after so many years, his legacy still influences the way we think about the future of wildlife. What do you think? Does trophy hunting have a future in Africa? Or are we on the right path to ending this cruel practice once and for all? Leave your opinion in the comments. We want to know what you think. And if you enjoyed this story and want to keep learning more about these great felines and the impact they have on our world, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Let's explore more about nature and the mysteries it holds, together.